Welcome to Bone2Pick, HipBoneMusic's Artist of the Month interview series. We are here at the Juilliard School in New York City, and I am honored to introduce and interview one of the greatest trumpet players of all time in the history of the instrument, Mr. Phil Smith. Phil is the principal trumpet of the New York Philharmonic, is an internationally renowned trumpet soloist, and I'd kind of like to just say I have one personal story to start off with. Phil has played on several of my HipBoneMusic releases, which I'm very grateful to him for doing. And a few years back, I recorded a CD called Trumpets 11. And this kind of spoke to who Phil Smith is. We had a different trumpet player, myself, and rhythm section on every track. And a really great lineup, including Randy Brecker, Eddie Henderson, Chuck Finley, Malcolm McNabb, Jim Hines, Scott Wenholt, Ryan Kaiser, Tom Harrell, a couple others Chris Bodie, probably not remembering, but it was fantastic. And I would call each guy to tell them about the project and ask them if they'd be involved. And they all said, yes, yeah, I would love to do it. And then they would ask who else is playing on it, and I would list. And then I'd say, oh, well, by the way, Phil Smith is going to be playing. And the reaction was the same. Everybody was like, Phil Smith is playing on this? I need to get the music in advance, and I'm going to check all this out. What day is that recorded? I want to make sure I have some practice time in advance. Phil Smith is on this? And it was just the funniest reaction, because here are all these great players, and the thing that captivated them the most is that they were going to be involved with Phil Smith and his remarkable playing. So, Phil, thank you so much for being here today. I know you've got a concert in a couple hours. I know your schedule's jam-packed, so we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us.
Thanks, Mike. I got to tell you, though, that's exactly what my impression was when I heard all the other guys. I was going, what am I doing on this recording? So I appreciate you letting me be part of that. I certainly felt kind of strange being with such great trumpet players.
Well, your contribution, like everything you do, was remarkable. Maybe let's start by talking about your beginning stages of playing when you were growing up. I had one specific thing. I know, well, I, like many others, consider you to have the greatest trumpet sound of all time. It's just remarkable. And I was curious as to how that developed for you as a younger player. I know your father, Derek, was a renowned cornet soloist, and I assume your teacher early on. Maybe you could talk about his influence on your development and just that time in your life.
Yeah, I think it's one thing to say that we have this or that, and I don't know whether I have a great trumpet sound. I just have a sound that's me. And to me, that's just sort of a God-breathed sound. That's what's in my being. It's what comes out. And I think perhaps for me, having started on cornet in Salvation Army bands, playing in churches and that, I always think it's best to start a kid on cornet because his initial blat is going to come out as a blot. And it's going to be a more mellow, rounder sound. But I had that cornetty influence and sound that was so much a part of what I did. And there was always a reference with my dad as a teacher and as a bandmaster at church. There was always a reference to what we were playing, that it was lyrical. And to say the words, to literally sing the words through the horn. And I think some of that goes in there as well. You start thinking in terms of R and syllables. And I think that openness of sound was something that was a part of it. So the singing nature of the horn, of the approach, the cornet, obviously hearing my dad play, he had an absolutely gorgeous, beautiful sound. He still does to this day. And I think that just sort of goes in, gets absorbed, and comes out, as I say, the way God sort of breathed it out. So.
Wow, that's great. I can imagine being around and hearing somebody playing at that level. Must have been an amazing experience as a young person.
Yep. To have those impressions are always there.
Yeah, that's great. Well, you're a graduate of this prestigious institute that we're sitting in right now, the Juilliard School. You went on to teach here many years later.
A couple times, I think. Yeah. I've been in and out of teaching.
Yeah, and when you were here, you studied with the great William Vacchiano.
I did. I actually started with Ed Troidel, and I started my first 3 years here at Juilliard with Ed Troidel, and then I created severe tension by deciding that for my 4th year and perhaps my 1-year extension in order to get a master's here, that I would study with Vacchiano, not realizing that the controversy that would create among the two teachers, as well as, it was a little bit hard. But when I came to school, you have to remember that when I came to school, I had been part of this British brass band world, playing cornet. The only trumpet playing I'd done was in high school band, and that even there, I played the high school trumpet, the high school band director's trumpet, but I used my old V funnel-shaped cornet mouthpiece with a shank.
Wow.
And that's what I played until I came to Juilliard. So I didn't know who Vacchiano was. I didn't know who any trumpet player was. I had no concept of orchestral trumpet playing at all. And I studied with Ed Troidel because there was another great trumpet player, young gal, who had grown up in the Salvation Army, and her name is Carol Dorn Reinhardt. And she recommended to my dad, and that's where Ed Troidel's name came out, and so that's where the direction I went. And I'm actually very pleased that I did. I got a solid foundation with Ed. And then I felt that I needed to as with any teacher, sometimes you begin to hear the same things over and over again, and I'm never sure whether I haven't gotten it or whether there's not enough to say, but I felt I needed the change, and so I moved to Vacchiano to get more of an orchestral approach and that. But I think I got the best out of those 5 years, with 3 with Ed and 2 with Bill. And then that helped make me who I am, as well as then where I went from there.
Well, I did not know that about you came in basically new to orchestral playing and new to trumpet, the actual trumpet. I mean, obviously you had a lot of skill as a cornet player, but that's remarkable.
A quick story about that. I was taking my orchestral audition here at Juilliard with Jean Morel. He was in the room, and he put up on the stand Peter and the Wolf. And of course, Peter and the Wolf is, I now know, it's trumpet in C. And I just looked at the music, and Peter and the Wolf didn't mean anything to me. The music looked kind of simple, and I played what I saw. And he went berserk and started yelling in sort of this thick French English. And no, and he started saying these syllables like do, re, mi, fa, sol, and I didn't know what the heck he was talking about. And then I left the room. Now I know what he was talking about. I was playing it on a B-flat trumpet as I saw it instead of in C. And he was going berserk and couldn't understand why I didn't understand that. So, consequently, I didn't play an orchestra for the first 2 years here at Juilliard.
Well, that's good, important advice for our viewers. So if you have somebody start screaming at you in the middle of an audition, it could still work out great.
Yeah, just press forward.
Keep going. Well, you were still a student at Juilliard in 1975 when you were appointed to the Chicago Symphony by Sir George Solti. An astounding accomplishment by any measure, and especially considering the fact that you had just a few years that you just shared with us about new to orchestral music. What was it like becoming a member of that great brass section at such an early age, and specifically, what was it like working with the great Bud Herseth?
I mean, for me, I was doing my master's program at that time, and it was, it was now time to start thinking beyond school. And so I tried to get auditions at a few orchestras. The only orchestra that let me play, I won't name all the others that rejected me, but the only one that let me play was Chicago Symphony. And I went there strictly to find out what an audition was like. So there was nobody more shocked than I was that I went through the system. And when I came out, it was like, Phil, who? Where did this person come from? And I was a total, as Bud Herseth used to say, used to refer to me as a greenhorn. And I was totally a greenhorn. I didn't know one side of the trumpet to the other. But they took a chance on me. And for me, it was the best thing that I could have done at that point, to come out of the school experience, to go sit in the Chicago Symphony, to know that they had trust in the fact that I could do this, even though it might take me a little bit to get caught together. But then I used to position my chair as fourth trumpet so I could just watch down the line and just watch and listen and absorb the whole thing. That time Jacobs was the tuba player, and Clevenger was principal horn in his prime, and Friedman was principal trombone, and they were just great. The trumpet section was Herseth, Charlie Geyer, and who had moved from fourth to second, which is how I got in, and Bill Scarlett. And it was such a great experience to see that and to be a part of that whole thing with Solti. So
that's amazing. Wow, what a great story. And I mean, in addition to just being captivated by what you just said, I think what you just capsulated the whole thing. You were listening and you were open to everything, and that's got to be part of what has led to your greatness. Is you're just open and you're listening. That's an amazing story. Well, then you assumed the position of co-principal trumpet in the New York Philharmonic just a few years later in 1978, and then went on to become principal trumpet in 1988. Can you share some of your memories about returning to New York and beginning what would become such a successful tenure here in the New York Philharmonic?
It was frightening. I was actually very happy in Chicago. Charlie Geyer had wanted to move on from Chicago and get a first trumpet job, and so he moved on to Houston Symphony as first trumpet. So for my last few months in Chicago, I was playing a lot of second to Herseth, and I loved that. I just had such a great working relationship with him. He was like a father to me. Bud could be temperamental, and I'd grown up in a home of stiff upper-lipped Englishmen, and so I knew when to be quiet and when not to say anything and just keep my ears open and do my part. But I learned from him a lot, and he also was a great encourager. There were so many times when he'd just say words of encouragement that just lifted me up. And I remember when the opportunity came to come to New York, he said, you know, you need to do this, you need to try this. He says, you'll always wonder if you don't do it. But I remember saying to him, but I'm happy just playing here. And he says, you'll always wonder whether you missed something. So I think you should do it. And he gave me a couple of coaching sessions, and off I came and I played. And again, that was my second audition, and here I am now co-principal in New York. And you come here, and it was a bit of a shock in a lot of different ways, some that weren't very pleasant, to be honest. And but I guess there was just something in me that, again, my nature or just who I am as God has created me, that was able to take all of that and all of the rough bits and work through it and just keep pressing on. And I can't believe that at this point I've been playing first trumpet for 34 years at the Philharmonic. It was co-principal position, basically because that was a position that Jerry Schwartz and Johnny Ware had at that time. Jerry moved on to conduct, and I came into that co-principal position. But I did a lot of work as principal player, and so it in no way, shape, or form was it sort of half the job. It was a lot of the job, and there was a lot of pressure as a young guy to sit here and learn how to become a principal player. I didn't know it all when I came here, and I certainly had help from a lot of people, a lot of colleagues who, again, were encouraging to me. And it's been a process, but here I am 34 years later. So. Did
you, considering the success you had with the audition in Chicago, when you took the audition in New York, did you feel like, I got a shot at this, I'm 1 for 1, why not go 2 for 2?
The whole audition experience was a very tough audition experience. It involved another player, and we went back and forth, on and off the stage, playing and playing and playing and playing, and I finally said that this has to stop. I got to catch a plane back to Chicago. I got a rehearsal in the morning. And then there was as I remember, there was a long delay before I finally got a call from James Chambers to say, we're going to offer you the position. What all went on in that time, I don't know, and I don't really want to know. But I must say that I did go home thinking, doggone it, does it have to be this hard?
Wow.
And I wasn't quite, when he called to offer me the position, I wasn't really of a mind to take it. I kind of thought, I'm not sure if I want to get into this New York thing. I grew up in New York. I know what New York is like. I kind of like Chicago. I like playing second to Bud. I'm kind of comfy here. But again, I heeded the words of Bud, and I took the chance and came and did it. I'm glad I did.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, it's great that Bud Herseth, obviously he knew what your talents, and it felt like giving you a little nudge to make that move.
Tremendous respect for him. And I know now how hard it is to play the position. And I know what that does to you as a person, and I know the angst that it can put you in, and the tension it can get you in, and how we all relieve tension in different ways. And so I know that sometimes Bud could be a little feisty, and he could be he could have a bark. But I also saw a side of him that was so encouraging. that I'll always have tremendous respect for him.
That's great. Well, thanks for sharing that with us.